You think you got what it takes to reach the end of Survivor? You have the chops, the skills, the capability to tough it out? Be it physical, social, or strategic, or luck, never discount Lady Luck. These are the 5 people I believe were most unlikely to win Survivor. And then didn't. Well, that was a letdown of an intro. Internet, after a fan of mine, Leighton, reached out and asked me for my thoughts on this video topic, I thought, let's see what we can do. Let's talk about the unlikely. To be clear, this video is about players who reached the final tribal but didn't win. I'm not talking about winners in this one, just losing finalists. So what criteria decides a player is more or less likely to reach the end? Are players who are annoying others and socially outcast increasing their odds because they might get dragged, or decreasing because they're just that? The older seasons emphasize survivability of the wilds and being able to provide for the tribe. Is it more shocking when someone who never really did any of that goes deep? These are just a few of the questions I asked myself when putting this top 5 together, and personally I think that is a very specific amalgamation of all sorts of factors, from strategic prowess to willpower to desire to perception, reputation, and yeah, even their ability to make a fire every so often. I think there are a lot of ways you can slice this top 5, and well, just looking at the names I've got, it is gonna go in like 5 different directions. At number 5, I have a returning player who reached the end on their 3rd appearance. And I'm still a little shocked at times to know that not only did Coach reach the final tribal on season 23, he also could have won the game had he just owned his game a little more. Yeah, Benjamin Coach Wade is 5th for my list of unlikely finalists, because if you showed me the guy who played on Tocantins on Heroes vs. Villains and told me to guess how well he would fare on a 3rd appearance, well, I'd say he'd be more likely to regress and be closer to a first boot than a runner-up. About as close to slaying a real dragon than being a Survivor winner. When he got 5th on season 18, I was shocked, given how poorly he was playing, how huge his ego was, and how boldly he just commanded his tribe to follow his lead into oblivion. He had the lead going into the merge and totally blew it, and his antics were not much appreciated by the cast. He returns 2 seasons later and doubles down on everything he did wrong, rubbing his tribe the wrong way, having them all laugh at him for his bravado. We saw it all yet again in the confessionals, just as his villain's tribe saw it on the beach in real time. And his awful move to not pick a side in the Rob versus Russell rivalry doomed his game. Nobody was loyal to him. So color me shocked when he returns as a tribe leader not long after and is told to be a temporary player by Christine on minute 1, and then actually puts together a pretty good strategy to run the tribe, run the game, and be in a prime position to possibly win. Who is this reformed jackass? Because he didn't seem like the one I knew a few seasons prior. Coach arrived and ruled the roost, led what felt a bit like a cult, weaponized religion seemingly inadvertently, flipped the numbers at the right time to seize the endgame, and had a pretty good argument to win. There he was in the finals, having orchestrated his grand Survivor symphony, and all he had to do was own it. Tell the jury he was the conductor. And he couldn't, because of course he's Coach. It wasn't all entirely by design. He did still make enemies along the way, as I thought he would, and once again he got in his own way. When mixed with new players, returning players tend to fare well, and Coach was no exception, so on paper it wasn't so unlikely to see him or Ozzy go far. But I just can't believe it was Coach of all players who did this. It kind of feels like a fever dream the more I think about it.
I started this journey 3 years ago. I wanted to change the game, and I nicknamed myself the Dragon Slayer. But now is the 3rd and final chapter of my journey on Survivor. I see myself going from destruction to absolute victory.
Number 4 is another pick who I think on paper some will say is a shock. But when I'm looking at all the finalists, a lot of them play it safe and aren't surprising enough for me to feel like they couldn't do it all over again. For better or worse. I think there's a lot of wiggle room for the word unlikely to be interpreted, so just bear with me here when I talk about how wildly unlikely it appears to me that a celebrity like Mike White, actor from School of Rock fame, all-star racer from The Amazing Race, screenplay writer of the Emoji Movie, and yes, future director of one of my favorite shows, The White Lotus, is not only a Survivor finalist, but also one of the best players on his season, possibly the best, and one of the better players to never win Survivor at all. Mike is a huge fan of Survivor. Jeff has his number on speed dial, and so I know he's got some idea of what the game is going to be like. He's not just cast because he's made a name for himself in Hollywood, but years ago I made a video looking deeper into celebrities on Survivor and discovered of the over 30 of them to ever play, not many of them have reached the end, only 3. None of them have ever won, and on average, they're more than likely to get voted out before the halfway point instead of after. Which then leads me to be pretty surprised to see Mike do what he did. Mike, admittedly, is not a survivalist. He is best known for sipping his wine and cracking dry jokes. He entered the game with others knowing who he was, and that he really was actually a Goliath. His reputation preceded him, and he could easily cause others to desire to take him out because he doesn't need this. And yet, that's not what happened. Mike integrated himself so well, he was running the game for much of it, particularly in the latter half after the Carl blindside. And despite being such a social force, he was never really threatened to be taken out. I don't know if I have too much else to say other than just he had the win in the palm of his hands, and I can't believe I'm talking about Ned Schneebly of all people. But here we are. He's number 4.
I came to Hollywood, and I'm not one of the beautiful people. Like, I felt like I really had to author my life by just writing. I am more successful than I ever thought I would be. Everybody in my business wants the Oscar. It's like, you're losers. Like, I want to win Survivor.
The third most unlikely Survivor finalist is one who I probably don't need to spend too much time explaining, and that is Nalia from season 4, Marquesas. Nalia was a young woman who was rather naive for the first half of the game, was used as a pawn by the Majority Alliance on her tribe, actually had a showmance with Gabe that was never talked about much, and even admitted herself that she didn't start playing the game until over halfway into this season. Day 24 to be exact, the day she turned on her original tribe and helped flip the game post-merge for the first time ever in Survivor history. Nalia couldn't really own her game because she didn't have much of a game to own. She lacked strategic intentionality for too long, and when she finally got around to waking up and smelling the burnt coffee, she still couldn't explain why turning on the Road to 4 Alliance was good for her and worthy of a win. She kind of went in reverse. It cost her jury votes. It cost her the game. Similar to Coach, she could have won, but she got in her own way, and the Nalia I watched on season 4 is a player I don't trust on most occasions to get this far or do this well. She wasn't really a physical competitor, she wasn't a strategic threat, and I wouldn't even say that she was someone who can't outright win, which contributes to why she's in my top 5, because she might not even be dragged to the end as an easy beat. She was still likable, affable. A lot of finalists who aren't on this list are players who I think could easily be recognized as GOATs, as players drawing dead. They're never winning, and would probably get dragged on most seasons to lose in front of the jury, like Philip or Lil. Nalia is not Philip. To me, she walks a fine line between these two separate paths that unfortunately don't mesh well together, and it leaves me thinking she is one of the more unlikely finalists we've ever seen.
I've been thinking about this all day of, who's gonna vote for me tonight, and all I can do is just say what I, feel.
Why should I give you my vote?
Why you should give me your vote. Ugh, God, that sucks. I think it's luck that I'm up here right now. I want you guys to know towards the end, day 24, I did start having to play the game.
And now for something completely different. I'm turning this into a top 6 because, I realized I actually have 3 people in my top 2, and 2 of them are so similar in nature that I can't not include them side by side. So, in a joint entry, let's talk about 2 finalists who I don't see talked about much, are quite unique as far as players go, have some unique overlapping traits for this video topic, and yet play the game so far apart from one another. Tied for number 2, or I guess number 3 and number 2, I am talking about Matthew from season 6, The Amazon, and Ken from season 33, Millennials vs. Gen X. They're both described by their fellow cast members as weird, awkward, clueless, not very strategic, socially out there, and overall not strong contenders to ever win a season of Survivor. I know Ken is characterized early on as an overall good guy who provides for the camp, just as Matthew was portrayed later on as a misunderstood old soul who cared a lot about others, but well, that doesn't mean they don't fit my criteria for unlikely players to reach the end. Both of them are physical threats to win challenges, which they did. So that puts a target on their back by default. Likewise, they're not really players who work the social game very well, which means I don't have faith that they'll make the game work in their favor to go the distance all the time. Players begrudgingly kept them around, despite them either weirding the tribe out or annoying them with their strategic antics. Ken's desire to hold a purity test to see who he can work with is wild and just not befitting of someone I expect to see do well at the game. Likewise, Matthew sharpening the machete constantly all day at camp and being compared to an alien is bizarre. It's one thing to be like Colby, where you socially adjust well with the group and provide for the tribe and also win a lot of challenges, or Ozzy, who provides a lot of food and resources. These are some finalists that I would categorize as ultimately pretty likely to reach the end. But you also need to be able to fit in and have some strategic bone in your body, and that just wasn't much the case with either Matthew or Ken. They mostly just hung on, went with the flow, but socially were not beloved, strategically were not doing much, and physically painting a larger target on their back. I think they were both quite lucky to be around superfan strategists who picked them up and brought them to the end, because I don't expect that to happen very often. They were still friendly guys, mostly passive, not argumentative or hostile like other losing finalists, but well, that also kind of works against them in my mind for this topic. It makes them bigger threats, and so I have them both in my top 3.
But all I can think is, I'm hungry.
Something with that generation, they don't know how to just sit and appreciate something without talking the entire time.
Working with Ken is like getting your finger and toenails ripped out at the same time. It's excruciating.
I don't just have a 5-minute conversation and then hop in bed with somebody. I've got to know the core of a person.
Yeah, are you gonna butcher us all there?
I promise I won't harm anyone.
Matt is creepy. He's creepy. He's creepy.
Why does he need the machete so sharp? I think he's gonna kill us.
And then we get to number 1, the most unlikely Survivor finalist to ever survive until the end. And this player was a legit contender to win this season, unlike some of the others here, which is even more wild to consider. I am talking about Courtney from season 15 China. For no other major reason than she didn't even want to be out there much in the first place. She didn't care much for the show or the game or her tribe mates or Jeff or least of all John Robert, and really would have been fine had she been voted off first. It's a free vacation. But unfortunately for her, she instead lasted 39 days and almost won the game, being the runner-up with 2 jury votes to her name and possibly having a few others go her way had Todd not given such a strong final tribal performance. Courtney's a bit like Nalia in a way, except Courtney readily admits that she just didn't really care to play the game from day 1 instead of day 24, and she owns it. She's not confused or lost or unsure of how she feels about everyone. She's actually more worried how others might feel about her.
Even the 2 people who want to be like my friends, Todd and Amanda. I don't feel like I really need to be anybody's friends in this game. I dislike everyone else more than I dislike Todd and Amanda. I think they mistake that for friendship.
She is irreverent as all get out. She does not take the show that seriously. She is not a physical threat despite winning a whole ass challenge on her own. She's not a strategic threat and instead relied on others to do that heavy lifting, and yet she is a social threat, without a doubt. She has the chops to win, but everything else about what she brought to China fits how unlikely it is to me that she was a finalist, let alone a near winner. And you know, if you think about it, had Sandra been voted out instead of her in Heroes vs. Villains, there's a decent chance that Courtney rolls to the end with Russell and Parv, and maybe she is a winner after all. Was Courtney really that close to being a 2-time winner? And because of all this, she is one of my favorite people to ever be on the show. She is one of a kind. She is very unusual compared to who gets cast on any season, and I think she's the most unlikely finalist in the history of Survivor.
Cheers to the final 3, girls.
Whoever would have thought? No one. Not me. I'm proud of myself, and I can't believe it. Like, my final goal was to make the final 3. I have never been anything but my own winsome personality that has been called every name in the book since day 1.
How can I, in good conscience, give you my vote tonight?
I came from the worst odds. I was never the favorite in this game.
I'll give you
There you
that. Thanks, that's a good answer.
And those are my top 6 most unlikely Survivor finalists. Let me know what you think about my picks and who you might pick for this topic of discussion. And now that I think about it, who are the most unlikely Survivor winners? Should I make that video? A huge thank you to my patrons for all your support. Thank you to Leighton for suggesting the idea, and thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this off-the-wall group of castaways. Don't forget to keep sharpening your social machete on your way out, and I will see you in the next one. Once I purity test all of you to really see if you're loyal enough to be in this so-called alliance. I don't know, maybe we're not ready for that yet. Maybe we're just in our voting block stage.
I don't just have a 5-minute conversation and then hop in bed with somebody. I've got to know the core of a person, their integrity, their value. I give people one chance to be honest with me, and if that breaks, then that's done. You're one of the few people I've found in this game that I feel is as authentic as myself. Yeah. And I respect that more than you can possibly know.
I'm thinking we're good to go. Then Ken walks back up into camp, gets Jay, and says we need to talk. And at this moment, I know we're about to have a rumble.
Next minute, I have Ken come up to me and say, Will told me that you're voting my name. And I'm like, what the
I was testing you earlier to see where you were at, because
I get it, you're blowing up my game at this point.
We have this plan, and Ken tests Will, revealing Will's plan. That's not a test. That's a betrayal.
Now Will has no incentive to vote with us. Ken just screwed up everything.
I don't know why Ken did that.
I've got to know the core of a person,